eventually passing through the estate of the Duke of Westminster. The family's name is Grosvenor, and the present 6th Duke owns some 12,000 acres here just south of the city. His home is known as Eaton Hall, and has been a family possession since the 15th century. The original Grosvenors were actually kinsmen of William the Conqueror himself, and as Norman Earls, they controlled most of the land around Chester.
Look at that, it's
Today, not only are they the biggest landowners in Chester, but also in London, with properties in areas such as Grosvenor Square, Belgravia, and Mayfair. As the vessel moves on downstream, almost immediately note the Red House on the right-hand side. There has been a public house on this site since 1850. It used to be painted a vivid red until quite recently, but toned down to its present colour to blend in more naturally with the river environment. A tea room was installed in its riverside gardens in 1890, followed by a ferry service which operated from 1900 until the early 1950s. A little further on, note the large luxury apartment block. Built in 1979, it is known as Riverside Court. From 1868 until the 1970s, this was the site of yet another public house and lodgings known as the White House Hotel. The hotel provided rowing boats for hire, and it too ran a ferry service until the onset of the Second World War. Beyond Riverside Court and continuing for quite some distance on the right-hand side, look out for some riverside wooden cottages, which were once part of the property of the large houses to the rear. Over the years, many of these riverside buildings have been sold off. Prices vary considerably depending on their size and quality, but are quite expensive considering that the owners cannot live in them, and insurance is difficult because of the likelihood of flooding. Now turning to the left-hand side and far away in the distance, you will soon be able to see part of the city skyline. The tall pointed tower is part of the town hall, seat of local government since it was built in 1869. Very much in the style of a French chateau, but surprisingly designed by a young Irishman, William Lynn of Belfast, when only 29 years of age. Moving further to the right, you can see the 4 turrets atop our majestic cathedral. Originally this was the site of a 7th century Saxon minster, but in the 11th century, with the arrival of William the Conqueror, the first Norman Earl of Chester, Hugh d'Avranches, built an abbey here in 1092. In 1540, along came Henry VIII, and in order to divorce his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, he split with the Church of Rome and made himself head of the newly formed Church of England. From this point on, Chester's Abbey became its cathedral. In 1992, Chester celebrated its 900th anniversary, firstly as an abbey and then as a cathedral. Queen Elizabeth II herself joined Chester's celebrations by creating the law of mayoralty of the city. Since 1228 we had a mayor, now we have a Lord Mayor. Still on the left-hand side, but sweeping well to the right, you will notice a tall chimney. This is Chester's lead shot tower. This tower was built in 1799 to provide lead shot, otherwise known as musket balls, primarily for use as ammunition in the Napoleonic Wars. Although a number of such towers were built at that time, Chester's Tower remains not only as a potential though unlikely source of production today, but as a reminder of those far-off days. I'm sure you will have noticed that for quite some time we've been trotting around a long bend of the river. In the 11th century, the land on the left-hand side was actually an island, known in those days as an eyot or eye, and was owned by the Norman Earls. When the last Earl died without an heir in 1237, the land passed to the Crown and was eventually sold off. Today it's a water meadow prone to winter flooding, and just as in medieval times, is still referred to as the Earl's Eye.
I wish we could get off now.
Returning once more to the right-hand side, one can't help but notice the large castle-type building set back in the trees. It is known as Walmore Hill, and was built as the retirement home of a very famous Chester Victorian architect by the name of John Douglas. He was responsible for more than 400 buildings in and around the city, and was particularly noted for his splendid chimneys, some resembling sticks of barley sugar. By far his most famous piece of work is the marvellous wrought iron framework supporting Chester's beautiful clock astride the Eastgate, the symbol of Chester throughout the world. Building work started on Walmore Hill in 1898, but unfortunately was still not quite finished at the time of John Douglas's death in 1911. This particular stretch of the river is known as D Ford and was the site of a Roman ford way back in the 1st century AD.
I seen
It's quite shallow here even today,
We tadpoles.
and it's still possible
There
to
was
walk across at this point without getting one's hair wet.
Go tadpoles.
Now in view on the right-hand side is a splendid 19th century crew
Look, I'm
baby
going to
with
look
a red
into the
roof,
river.
now divided into self-contained apartments.
Imagine my glasses fell
Although the
off.
stone running windows date from the 17th
Imagine
century,
we're in the
their
garden and
origins
we're
even today are
straight
still
in the river.
uncertain.
That'd be really scary.
Many of the buildings from this point on were constructed around the mid-19th century, in most cases for the well-to-do people of the day.
We're going back into
The railways came to Chester in the
Roman garden.
1840s and tourism started to boom. The city also became a fashionable centre for the rich and famous, many of whom chose to build their houses in the suburbs.